Meet Michigan, Chapter 2, Lesson 2, Ideas to Explore. Adapting to the environment. Changing the way you live to use what nature provides. People to meet. Anishinabeg. Gijikins, or Giji. Nabek. Odawa or Ottawa. Ojibwe. Ojibwa or Chippewa. Potawatomi. Tribe. Places to discover. Alaska, a state in the United States. Asia, a large region across the Pacific Ocean. China, a large country in Asia. Europe, an area of land across the Atlantic Ocean. France is a country in Europe. India, another large country in Asia. North America, the land where Canada, the United States, and Mexico are found. Words to welcome: birch bark, canoe, moccasin, sap, wigwam, and wild rice. Michigan tribes. Think about these questions while you read. Where did the first people in Michigan live before they came here? About when did they arrive? What I found at the farm. It was April, and I was ready for spring. I was restless. School was getting on my nerves. I liked my teacher, but you can only take so much sitting in a classroom. I had forgotten all about the field trip Mrs. Sanford had planned. We were going to a farm, but this was not a modern farm. On this farm, they used horses as they did over 100 years ago. Mrs. Sanford thought it would be good for us to learn about the old ways farmers once used. Finally, the bus stopped and they let us out. Now we could stretch our legs. There were 2 horses on the other side of the fence. They were the biggest horses I had ever seen. I mean, huge. Mrs. Jackson came to help keep an eye on us. She parked her car next to the fence. You will not believe what happened. One of those horses walked over by it and licked her window. Gross! Mrs. Jackson let out a little squeal. She ran over and shooed the horse away. That was funny. The farmer hitched the horses to a plow. He explained why it was important to plow a field before planting the seeds. He told us it was hard work for the horses to pull the plow. Then they went to work. They slowly moved across the ground. The metal plow turned the dirt over as it went. He said using horses is much, much slower than using a tractor. He had to stop and let the horses rest. You could see they were all sweaty. While they were resting, he asked the class to come over and see how the plow worked. You had to be careful as you walked. The dirt was softer after it was plowed. There were also some big stones in the dirt. So I was watching when I saw something in the ground. It just caught my eye. It did not look like a normal stone, but it was made of stone. I picked it up. It was thin and pointed. I held it up and asked, "What is this?" The farmer spoke. He said, "Young lady, what you have there is a spear point. It is something made by Native Americans probably hundreds or thousands of years ago. It is made of a kind of stone called flint." I stood and gave it to him. He told me, "You keep this artifact and take it to school. Your class can study it. Maybe it will get all of you excited to learn about the people who lived here a very long time ago." Back on the bus, I passed the spear point around. Everyone got to hold it and look at it. We were all excited, and we did want to learn more. We had many questions for Mrs. Sanford by the time we returned to school. Who exactly made the spear point? How long ago did they live here? What was life like for those people? What sort of homes did they have? Go back in time. Let's answer some of those questions. What was happening hundreds of years ago, right where you are sitting? What would you see? You might see wigwams. Wigwams are made of birch bark. The bark goes over a frame of wood. The birch bark was peeled off birch trees. The people you see speak differently. They dress differently too. Who are they? They are Native Americans. They were the first people here. Native means first. These people may also be called Indians. The name Indians was used by people who were lost. Those people came here from far away and thought they had found India. Let's meet the people who first lived where you live now. They lived in tribes. A tribe is like a big group of relatives all living in the same neighborhood. They may be called Odawa. This sounds like O-da-wa. They may be called Ojibwe. This sounds like O-jib-way. Others were the Potawatomi. This sounds like Pot-a-wat-o-me. These are the names of 3 tribes. Each tribe had its own ways of doing things. Each had its own beliefs and language. They lived close to nature. Most of us live very differently than these first people. They lived very close to nature. If they needed something, they found it or made it. They adapted to the environment. They changed the way they lived to use what nature provided. Today, we depend on a store having it. We use money to pay for it. When they were hungry, the tribes hunted or fished for food. They could not open the freezer to get something for supper. If they needed a plant, they grew it or knew where to find it. Almost every day, they saw the sun rise. They saw the sun go down. They saw the stars at night. You are probably watching TV when the sun goes down. Most nights, you do not see the stars because you are indoors. They understood that all things are connected. Each plant and animal is a part of a bigger picture. The tribes did not kill more animals than they needed for food. They knew each animal gave up its life so they could use it for fur or food. How did they get here? Have people always lived here? Most do not think so. These historians think there were no people in North America at first. North America includes 3 nations. They are Canada, the United States, and Mexico. They think the first groups of people moved from Asia. To help you find Asia, look for China on a map. China is a nation in Asia. These groups crossed a strip of land to reach Alaska. That land is now covered by part of the ocean. We call this area of water the Bering Strait. Some historians think they may have moved from other places instead. The first people here may have come from South America. Historians are still searching for the final answer. If no one lived here, why did they come? People move for different reasons. Perhaps there was not enough food in Asia. This would push people away. Maybe the hunting was better in North America, and this would pull them here. Maybe they wanted to explore. Maybe they wanted to escape a war. That would push them away. Once in North America, they spread out. Finally, some of them reached Michigan. When did they arrive? How long ago did the first people come here? We think it was about 12,000 years ago. They reached southern Michigan first. Why? Before that time, this land was covered with ice. Yes, it was covered with a glacier of ice. Thousands of years ago, this ice began to melt. It melted first in the south, where it was warmer. People could live in the south while it was still icy in the north. How do we know these things? People who study the past tell us. These historians look for clues buried in the ground. Sometimes they dig up things left behind by the first people. They may find arrowheads, stone tools, and other clues. Do you know anyone who has found an arrowhead or spear point? How many were there? Going back 400 years, when the tribes lived here alone, there were fewer people. Maybe 35,000 to 45,000 people lived in Michigan then. It is hard to know for sure. Historians make the best guess they can. More about the Ojibwe. Let's walk into the woods and meet a brother and sister. They are your age. They are Native Americans. The girl's name is Gidgikins, which means small cedar tree. Those in her family call her Gidji. Her brother's name is Nabek. Sounds like Nabek, and it means a boy bear. They are members of the Ojibwe tribe. Their home is in the Upper Peninsula. They want to tell you about their tribe. The word Ojibwe is a kind of moccasin. Ojibwe is a name used by nearby tribes. The Ojibwe call themselves Anishinaabeg. It means the people. Each tribe had a word in its language meaning the people. That is the name they usually called themselves. Nabek says, "Our tribe is a large one. It does not just live in Michigan. We live all across the area of the northern Great Lakes." Gidgee says, "Our people have lived in other places at different times. Our legends say we moved from the east long ago." Do not be confused. The names of tribes often have different spellings. This is because the tribes did not use written words. People from Europe wrote the same word, but often spelled it differently. Ojibwe is the same as Ojibwa or even Chippewa. They all mean the same tribe. Clothes and food. Furs and animal skins were used to make most clothes. Everything used was found in nature. Finding food was very important. There were no stores. There were few ways to keep food from spoiling. The tribes had to hunt or fish almost every day. The tribes often lived along the lakes and rivers. Nabek enjoyed fishing with his father. They went out in a birch bark canoe. Wild rice was important food for some tribes. It grew in swampy places. Gidgee and Nabek used a canoe to harvest the rice. Nabek paddled through the tall rice. Gidgee pulled the plants over the canoe and shook them. The dark, ripe grains of rice fell into the canoe. School? Ojibwe boys and girls learned by being with their dad and mom. They watched what their parents did. Soon, they could hunt or make clothes too. They did not spend time in classrooms. They learned by watching and doing. Winter could be hard. When Gidgee and Nabek were very young, winter was an adventure. They thought the snow was fun. As they grew older, they realized winter was not an easy time. It was hard to hunt in the deep snow. Food became hard to find, and there was less to eat. Thank you for spring. Wow, spring. Warmer weather meant more to eat. It was also the time to make maple sugar. The Ojibwe went into the forest to collect sap from the maple trees. They boiled away the water in the sap. Finally, it became maple syrup or maple sugar. The warm, sticky sweet was a treat. The tribes used maple sugar and honey to sweeten their food. Maple trees can live to be 200 years old. Maybe your maple syrup came from the same tree used by the tribes long ago. You can learn more about maple sugar in the next lesson.